So this happened back in high school, involving one very dear friend and his manic sociopath of a buddy. Let me outline the cast of this beautiful production. First, there was our victim, who was possibly just the nicest dude I have ever encountered in my life. I'll call him ND. His home life was pretty good. While it was just him and his mother was incredibly busy working a very high-paying job to give him a comfortable life, and as such, she wasn't home often. So to make up for that, and to assure her son was living comfortably, she provided him with an insane weekly allowance, like $500 insane. And so, of course, being a teenager with more expendable income than he knew what to do with, he constantly blew it on weed, electronics, and nice clothes. Despite his comfortable living situation, he was by and large just a great dude. Always spent money on his friends, shared his weed, had movie nights. Honestly, I think he just felt a little lonely and wanted to share what he had with people he cared about. Then we have the agent of chaos in this story. We will call this absolute fucking maverick Horse, due to an equally illogical high school nickname that he demanded everyone call him. Horse and I were buddies, mainly due to equal parts self-preservation and edgy teenage nihilism that simply wanted to release his special brand of unhinged out into the world. He was the friend you made because it was not a matter of if he got sent to jail, but when, and you really rather not have your name be a part of that headline. This wasn't to say that Horse was a bad dude. Talking to him was pretty chill for the most part, and I genuinely enjoyed our time together, but you got the vibe that there was this underlying problem going untreated. A nice enough dude if you were friends, didn't even really ever argue with people, but if you wronged him then might as well skip the country and change your name. Horse didn't deal in an eye for an eye. He wanted your teeth, eyes, and maybe a few fingers while he was at it. Horse also bought a wild animal off of someone at school. This is unrelated to the story at hand, but I feel it paints the picture of just the kind of impulsive teenage boy who purchases a wild animal that another teenager clearly just found somewhere outside and brought into the school, all without having a single clue of how to care for it. I'm going to leave what type of animal unspecified, as it was the same as his nickname, but we'll say that it was a dog-sized herbivore that lived uncaged on his bedroom floor for several years. So, into the story. ND came to school one day looking like he just got dragged behind a car for a few blocks. We're talking busted blood vessels in his eye, scrapes and cuts, as well as several swollen bits on his face. He was, and still is I suppose, a very dark-skinned guy, so just how bruised he was I can't tell you. But I was going to hazard the guess super. Normal friend reactions, including my own, were immediate concern, asking if he needed to go to the hospital, if he was all right. And what happened? Turns out he had invited a few guys over to his place the night before to smoke weed, bought and paid for by him, and play video games. Upon seeing ND's apartment and all his fancy toys, they decided to repay his kindness by beating the ever-loving crap out of him and horking his stuff. Rational friends told him to file a police report, to which he waved them off, not wanting to cause more issues, not to mention they had been smoking. Less rational friends suggested he get a strap, which he also declined. Then comes the least rational person in our entourage. Horse had not been present during ND's explanation of the night before, being a chaotic nexus of violent urges, shaped like a teenage boy. He needed his sleep, and a lot of it, so he never arrived at school less than an hour late. So he stumbles in as we're moving to a new class, takes one look at ND, and asks a single question. Who did it? ND, being a nice guy who hadn't even wanted police intervention, sure as hell wouldn't sick Horse on these idiots, so he made up some lie about having a concussion and not remembering. Horse doesn't buy it and spends the rest of his day up ND's ass, demanding to know the exact names of everyone involved. ND eventually buckles, reluctantly naming each of the poor idiots who would likely eventually wish that he had gone to the cops instead. Of course, first came violent retribution, Horse's favorite kind. Being an absolutely huge dude, with no regard for his own safety and well-being, and less regard for others. He was a pretty intimidating guy. He spent the rest of the day skipping out on his classes, hunting down each of the guys involved, and beating them, until my hands felt wet. His own words. Security stepped in once or twice handling him, with the same bored exasperation they faced all of our school's problems with. We went to a painfully underfunded school with lots of gang/drug/alcohol/pregnancy problems, and so the security swiftly stopped caring about their jobs. And if you couldn't guess, Horse was a bit of a problem student. Horse's real name. What do you think you're doing? They stole from my friend. Security just gave a deep, exasperated sigh, clearly understanding that they can do nothing about a clear violation of the law of the land, and that the slight Horse had faced demanded swift and extrajudicial retaliation. But also they did sort of get paid to make sure that these idiot kids didn't Lord of the Flies themselves out of the gene pool all the time, so some sort of compromise needed to be made for the sake of keeping their jobs. Just don't send him to the hospital, okay? It was a gentleman's agreement, to which Horse obliged. Maybe out of respect for the security guard who dealt with his shit, or maybe because his knuckles were bleeding, and that kinda sucked. Either way, there was a world of options for making their lives a living hell, and Horse intended to explore as many as he could, at least until they broke and took his ultimatum. Give my friend his stuff back, or I won't stop. But they had all weathered a beating. They were high on teenage hubris, and also probably weed. What was the worst he could do? Which is an incredibly stupid question to ask about a guy who once begged me to touch the bone poking out of his broken arm. I was crying more than he was. He proceeded to make the next few weeks hell. There was, of course, the petty things. Knocked their lunch out of their hands, swiped homework, locked one of them in the boiler room. Pretty much if you can imagine a bully from an 80s movie doing it. Short of vehicular homicide. What the fuck, Coonies? He did it. Then came the heavier stuff. Brought in his dad's bolt cutters in. Like I said, security was hot garbage in this school. Also only ever watched the front doors, leaving back and side doors free to sneak in and out of, and snapped the locks off of 2 of their lockers, as one of them used a master lock. Then proceeded to clear out their stuff. Textbooks, an iPod, which I now own, gym clothes, anything he could get his hands on would be swiped. The valuables would be kept. But things he didn't care about were usually ripped up and left in the hall to be discovered later along with the broken lock. Their cars were his favorite target by far. He stole their hubcaps, slashed their tires, left deep scratches along the side of their cars. One had a dick scratched into their passenger door. At one point he borrowed my tire iron to straight up remove one of their car tires and roll it off into the nearby park, where he ditched it in a patch of dry fenced-off scrub that had yet to be burned back, which would be a real fun discovery for the park department, I'm sure. He had entertained the idea of getting a skunk into one of their cars, but gave up when he realized we lived in a city and he had no idea of where to get or how to transport a skunk. Backpacks were snatched as well, mostly dumped in the ladies' locker room showers with the water on, though he did light one on fire if memory serves. Textbooks were free unless you ruined them, and then you had to pay out of pocket, and our school was very generous with what ruined meant. Covers fell off. Fine. All the pages are drawn on. Whatever. But if the whole book was destroyed, well, they couldn't do anything for you, and had to order a new one on your dime. He tried to tell a teacher that one of them had cheated off him, but given his scholastic history, that was quickly tossed out as dumb and sit back down, Horse's real name. The final nail in the coffin was ruining a senior's relationship with the girl he'd been dating since freshman year. So Horse had quite a few lady friends on account of being a very large, intimidating guy who would take any excuse, like perhaps a pretty girl complaining about a creep, to start a fight. Needless to say, they were keen on helping him out. One girl I'll call Praying Mantis decided to help in his crusade. Managed to finest dick pics out of our hapless senior. Of course he had a girlfriend, but he was also a very horny teenager, and PM was a very pretty girl. Sweet-talked him all the way out of his pants, and then proceeded to send every photo to his girlfriend and spin a tale about how she had been blowing him for 6 months now, how she hadn't known that he had a girlfriend, and she felt so bad. Of course, teenage girls are kinda dumb, and PM got called a slut and a bitch and all sorts of other names. But come the next day, we still find the cheating senior's ass very much dumped. After about a month or so of non-stop abuse, Horst never really felt an obligation to go to class, so he could spend all his free time on revenge if need be. Teachers just passed him with D's to get him out of their classes. He reminded them of his ultimatum. That evening, lo and behold, ND got a knock on his door, and his muggers were back, this time with most of his things in tow. They didn't return everything. I believe a few games and a Blu-ray player were not returned, but ND lied and told Horst he got everything back for the sake of ending his rampage. I do want to say that Horst faced some sort of punishment for his many crimes. However, over his career as my friend, he had informed me of so many suspensions, detentions, and extra work that he never planned to do that it all sort of blended together after a while, and I can't tell you how long he was out of school. But I can say that he was a junior both my junior and senior years.
Next story.
Throwaway to protect identity. All the names are made up and blah blah blah. Let me start with a little background. Me 28M and my wife 26F, married 3 years ago, and been together for 6 years. When we meet, I was already in my 3rd year of college for a special branch of a very productive industry, something like USA Army. You go in a different country for a few months, do some really dangerous jobs, get paid a lot, come back a few months, and so on. In the beginning, I was going for 6, 8, or even 10 months away in order to promote as fast as possible. Now I went around 4 years of medium salary in my country in just 3 months. It's a hard job, but I love it. My wife was very supportive, and I always knew that it's very hard for her to have this kind of lifestyle. I always tried to spoil her and compensate for my time spent away from her, with tons of gifts and trips to exotic places. 2 years ago, when I came home after an extended contract, I had to stay almost 2 more months because all flights and borders got shut down during COVID, but got 20% extra salary during this time. She told me she can't take it anymore. She goes crazy alone at home, and she has nothing to do. She lost her job during COVID and did not want to work again after that, which I fully support her, because I wanted her to be happy and money was not a problem. I was petrified, and at first I believed she wanted to break up. Then she continued with, "I love you so much, and I want you to give me a baby so I can take care of him and have a little bit of you when you are gone on contracts." After 5 months of hard work with no women in a 100 kilometers range making a baby was done very fast, and multiple times just to be sure, if you know what I am talking about. I was nervous for the first month because we always feared we may not be able to make a baby. For the first 4 years we did not use any kind of protection except pull out, and she never got pregnant. But after a few weeks, she wakes me up with a long kiss and a smile on her face, then shows me the test result. I was the happiest man alive. Everything changed. I was a man now. I was a father. I was on top of the world. I was going with her on every doctor appointment, and during contract, I was asking for echo sounds instead of nudes. The birth had not complications, and everything went amazing. 1 month later, I go on another contract to make some money that should cover every needs for our little baby. Halfway during this contract, I receive a text from my wife which shattered my life. The text was short and simple, and I would never forget that 4 words that sent me into deepest depression I had ever had: "I want a divorce." I did not understand. I tried to call her to find out what happened, and nothing. After a few days of talking back and forth, she said, "I want a divorce so I can marry with the love of my life." I was already preparing my suitcase because I made a request to my company to send me back as an emergency. When I got home, she and the baby was gone. 2 weeks later, I was in court to settle the divorce. During this, I found out that she had a lover for well over 4 years, and she plans of marry him as soon as the divorce is done. Now the laws in my country are different, and I knew that my first priority should be a really good lawyer. My wife had a really shitty one, and she decided to speak by herself without the help of the lawyer most of the times. Her whole idea was I am a woman, and he is never home. Well, even if the laws usually favors women in my country, cheating is considered to be a break of contract, wedding contract, and she wanted to take full custody of our children in order for me to pay child support. I was not letting this happen. I speak with my lawyer and an accountant, and it seems that I only had to pay child support for my base salary. My danger bonus is not included in child support because it's for my life risk and mine alone. And because the company pays less taxes on the danger bonuses, I have a lot of them, and my base salary is around 10% of my income. When she found out that she would take almost nothing from child support, and I gave her the option of me taking full custody of the child with a no-contact rule, and I will never ask her for child support, she agreed in a second. Basically, she agreed to get out of our lives. We even changed the birth certificate of the child as me the father and a blank space for the mother. She gave up any kind of claim on the baby. During the trial, her lover was asked to come as a witness, and the idiot agreed. He is an AliExpress version of Andrew Tate, an alpha man who treats women like shit, and this seems to turn her on, and has a pretty good income. He has a small company, less than half my salary, but he is always home, and it still is a lot for our country. Now, during the trial, he said they cheated behind my back for 3 years, and that the baby is his, and she tricked me to make her a baby in order not to find out about her cheating. He said all this just to make me feel horrible, I guess, because this is actually kinda illegal, something like alienate the love and other law terms my lawyer explained to me. He basically said I knew they are married, but I decided to ruin the marriage. Now at this point, the child situation was already done, and an agreement was signed. The judge asked my wife if it was true, and she said yes, and ordered a DNA test just to confirm. After the DNA test that confirmed what they said, the judge said she will let me cancel the agreement and settle the situation again with my wife, now that the child is not biologically mine. I said, no, Your Honor. This child is mine, and I want to keep him. The judge was stunned for a minute, but then she said, well, if the agreement is a valid contract, and since you don't want to void it, then Mr. L, you are a father, and no one can take that child away from you. In my country, it doesn't matter who is the biological parent, it matters who is the parent in the documents. And since he knew he is the father since the beginning, and did not come to the hospital to declare it, he automatically canceled all his paternal claims. Sounds stupid, but it makes sense, is in order to protect the idea of a family. And if a man recognizes a fatherless child at the hospital, he should not fear that the biological father will come back, is in order to protect the value of family and encourage people to do a good thing and start a family and things like that. Now the divorce was over, I got my baby, and my wife was out of my life. First thing I did was hire 3 babysitters to work 8 hours a day, so my child has 24/7 someone to stay with him, and I have time to prepare my revenge. I started 2 separate companies with the help of an online assistant from India. You can hire them kinda cheap, and they do whatever you need in online. This guy made 2 super professional companies, one in industrial credits, give money to businesses for a lower rate than banks, and the second one was a copycat of my ex-company, but this one was in the same city as his. Both were made just for one client, my ex-wife lover. My assistant started sending tons of ads to my credit company to him. Emails targeted Google/ads, etc. I was sure that he knows that if he needs money, this is the place. He can take a lot with low rates. Next, I made a lot of advertise on the second company. But the company had only the machines and the rented space, and only one worker, the cleaning lady. Every time someone called for the company services, they got immediately declined because we are overbooked. My ex-lover, let's call him D, was one of them. Multiple time actually, and he goes mad every time. He got rejected because he sees how big the competition is. Now it was the time to give him the bait. Because my company had some problems in the main country. I don't even know in which country this company was registered. They changed the management and wanted to make some fast profit, so the regional manager wanted to sell some of the equipments. When he heard this, he started calling and sending emails to buy them out. The response was something like, "We are an international company, we can't sell the brand, but we can sell some equipments." It was illegal to me to sell the company without showing him the accountant's data, which was empty, but equipments I could sell just within simple contract. He wanted the competition out of his city. He did not need the equipment. Sue, the manager, give him a deal. If you buy our equipments for, let's say, 3 times the price, we can say in the contract that we will not make business again in this city. In just 2 hours, I received calls and emails on my first company for a credit for that equipment and blah blah. I knew he was out of money because he spent a lot on his future wedding with my ex-wife. I've sent him a contract. Based on our evaluation, the equipment is not worth that money, Sue. He will need to give us a guarantee, his company, and he is not allowed to sell any equipment or parts of his company until he pays everything back. And if he is behind in payment for 6 months straight, I get all of it. Also in the contract, I stated that the credit company will buy that equipment directly. Basically, I just give myself my money. And I made sure every single word of the contract is legal and is a deal good enough for him to take it. Later that same day, he sent me the signed contract. Now, normally he should be able to pay for everything, even if the clients he hoped he will get from this company leaving are not existent. He still should be able to pay if he give me around 80% of his company income for the next 5 years. Fast forward a bit. In the day of the wedding, I go to give them an envelope. In my country, you give money in envelopes as wedding gift. He start to laugh at me and tell me to get out cause I am not invited, and he don't need my money. I smiled and I told him to open it. He looked inside, and he was expecting to come in court next week. He laughed and asked, "What is this?" And I told him, "See you in court. Enjoy your wedding night." Next week he came. I was suing him for child support. As I said in my country, if you are aware that you have a child and refuse to go to the hospital to recognize him, you are no longer the father, but you are still forced to pay child support, and is actually an increased rate because you tried to dodge responsibility, like running from a car accident scene. He did not want to pay Sue. He tried to say that he wants the child or co-custody, that he is the biological and blood, and blah blah. This made me happy because I wanted to drag the trial as much as possible to drain him of all this money. But I couldn't after the judge saw all his declarations during the divorce trial. She ended the trial really fast and forced him to pay me 40% of his and his company income since the child was born until he will finish college or I get married. And guess who did not manage to pay? And guess who is the new owner of his company? Now I don't work anymore. I just run his company and spend almost all my time with my child. UPDAT. A lot of people asked me about the child and the fact that I am not a bio father. I answered to some comments, but I want to put this answer here so people will stop asking. I do not plan to hide my child that I am not the bio father. As I said in a previous comment, we will talk about this when the time will come in high school maybe, or around that age. Until then, I will try to be the best friend and paternal figure I can be, and my child decide to go to the bio father, then I will not have any objection. Decisive into bonding. I need this child more than you think. After all that happened, I don't want a relationship anymore, and I am very lonely, and being financially free, I have no purpose in life anymore. And about the statistic, yes, statistics do not lie. And I did punish paternity fraud. But I punished the idiot who did it, not the innocent child. I harass him every month if he is 1 day late on child support, and I have a lawyer on payday, just to mess with him and scare him with another court call. I do not give a F about every man and blah blah. I take care of myself and my child, and other people's are not my business. If you are so insecure that you think I must punish my child so women will be scared to cheat on you, then maybe you are the problem.